The industrial-grade disinfectant burned my nostrils as I scrubbed at the stubborn coffee stain on the boardroom carpet. 3 hours into my shift, and my knees already protested the abuse, my fancy art history degree doing absolutely nothing to cushion the tile floor beneath me. "You missed a spot, Samantha." I looked up to see Irene, the head of the cleaning staff, pointing at a barely visible mark near the conference table's leg. Her face was impassive, but her eyes missed nothing. Not the way my hands had started to redden from the chemicals, not the exhaustion I was trying to hide, and certainly not any imperfection in my work. "Right away," I said, dipping my rag back into the bucket. As I returned to scrubbing, I caught my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Cassandra Pierce, summa cum laude graduate, former gallery assistant, and now, to my family's endless amusement, a cleaning lady at Blackwell International. 6 weeks ago, I had been at my cousin Vanessa's engagement party when my Aunt Eleanor cornered me by the dessert table. "Still no luck finding a real job, Cassie?" she had asked, her voice dripping with fake sympathy as she adjusted her designer glasses. "Such a shame. All that money your parents spent on that art degree." "I'm exploring my options," I'd replied, shoving a chocolate-covered strawberry into my mouth to avoid elaborating. My father had appeared then, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Cassie's got an interview at Blackwell International next week," he announced proudly. "Executive track potential." Aunt Eleanor's eyebrows had shot up in disbelief. "Blackwell? The art acquisition giant? Well, good luck with that." The memory made me scrub harder at the carpet. What would Aunt Eleanor say if she could see me now? The prestigious interview had ended with me being offered a position all right, as part of the night cleaning crew. What my family didn't know, what no one knew except my best friend Mia, was that this humbling job was exactly what I'd been after. The boardroom door opened suddenly, and I scrambled to my feet, nearly knocking over my bucket. A tall woman in an impeccable charcoal suit stepped in, her attention fixed on the tablet in her hands. Victoria Blackwell herself, CEO, art world legend, and the woman whose attention I was desperate to capture. "Oh," she said, finally noticing me. I didn't realize the room was being cleaned. "Almost finished, Ms. Blackwell," I said quickly, gathering my supplies. Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying me with the same intensity she likely used to authenticate priceless paintings. "You're new." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, ma'am. 3 weeks now." She nodded once, then gestured to the far corner. "When you're done, there's a fingerprint smudge on that display case. The Degas exhibition materials are being photographed tomorrow. I'll make sure it's perfect," I promised. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "See that you do." She turned to leave, then paused. "What's your name?" My heart jumped. "Cassandra. Cassandra Pierce." Another nod, and she was gone, the subtle scent of her expensive perfume lingering in the air. I exhaled slowly, my hand automatically reaching for the small notebook hidden in my uniform pocket. Tonight's observation would be entry number 15, another small piece in the puzzle I was assembling, another step in the plan only Mia and I knew about. 6 months, I reminded myself. 6 months of cleaning floors while everyone thought I had lost my mind. 6 months to prove I was more than just another trust fund art major with delusions of grandeur. 6 months to infiltrate Blackwell International from the ground up, and expose the truth no one else had been able to uncover. By midnight, my back ached from hauling trash bags down to the service elevator. The night shift was nearly over, and I'd filled 3 pages in my hidden notebook with observations about the Blackwell offices after hours. The executive floor was my favorite, not just because of the plush carpets that were easier on my knees, but because of the treasures it contained. Authentic artwork lined the walls, each piece worth more than I would earn in a decade. Authentication certificates displayed in elegant frames, declaring each masterpiece genuine. It was these certificates that had first caught my attention 6 months ago, during my final year at university. "You're still here?" Irene's voice startled me from my thoughts. "Your shift ended 20 minutes ago." I gestured to the display case I was carefully polishing. Ms. Blackwell specifically mentioned this needed special attention for tomorrow. Irene's expression softened slightly. "That's the kind of initiative I like to see. Most newcomers are running for the door the second their shift ends." If only she knew why I was really so dedicated. "Say," Irene continued, "there's a special event tomorrow night. Art buyers, critics, the whole high society crowd. We need extra hands for cleanup afterward. Double pay. You interested?" My heart leapt. These private showings were nearly impossible to access without connections. "Absolutely. Good. Be here at 10. She turned to go, then added, "And Cassandra? Wear the black uniform. The gray ones look too industrial for these fancy types." After Irene left, I finished with the display case, ensuring it gleamed under the soft gallery lighting. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Mia. "Me, special event tomorrow night. I'm in." Mia's response came instantly, "OMG. Reconnaissance mission upgrade. Want me to be your getaway driver?" I smiled at her enthusiasm. "Me, I'm cleaning up after, not robbing the place." Mia, boring. But still exciting. "Dinner tomorrow to plan?" Me, can't. Family dinner at my parents'. I groaned internally at the thought. Another evening of pitying looks and thinly veiled suggestions about more suitable career paths. If they only knew what I was really doing at Blackwell, they'd be singing a different tune. Or they'd think I'd lost my mind completely. After all, normal people didn't take cleaning jobs at prestigious art companies to investigate potential forgery and money laundering schemes. Normal people didn't spend 6 months researching authentication discrepancies in Blackwell's recent acquisitions. Normal people didn't risk everything on a hunch. But then, I'd never been particularly normal. The next evening, I sat at my parents' immaculate dining table, pushing food around my plate while my younger brother Nathan regaled everyone with stories from his first year of medical school. And then the professor said my diagnostic approach was the most thorough she'd seen from a first year, he finished, beaming. "That's my boy," Dad said proudly, refilling his wine glass. "Following in the family tradition of excellence." Mom turned her attention to me. "And how's your job, Cassandra?" The hesitation before the word job spoke volumes. "It's fine," I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "I'm learning a lot about the inner workings of a major art corporation." "From scrubbing their toilets?" Nathan snickered. "Nathan." Mom admonished, but I could see the amusement in her eyes too. "It's more than that," I insisted. "I get to see parts of the company most people never access. I observe how decisions are made, how the executives interact." While emptying their trash cans, Nathan interrupted again. Dad sighed, setting down his wine glass. "Sweetheart, we supported your art history degree because you were passionate about it. But don't you think it's time to pursue something more substantial? Gregory at my firm mentioned they need someone in their art appraisal division. The starting salary is quite reasonable." "I appreciate that, Dad, but I'm where I need to be right now." Mom exchanged a concerned look with Dad. We're just worried, honey. You were top of your class. You had offers from galleries all over the country. And now you're cleaning offices. It's not what we expected for you. Life rarely goes as expected, I said. I'm fine, really. This is temporary. That much was true, at least. Once I gathered enough evidence about the suspicious authentications coming out of Blackwell's acquisition department, I'd either have the scoop of the century or a one-way ticket to unemployment, possibly both. Well, Mom said, clearly unconvinced, as long as you're happy. I am, I lied. Happy wasn't quite the right word. Determined. Focused. Possibly obsessed. But not exactly happy. Later, as I helped Mom with the dishes, she spoke in the hushed tone reserved for uncomfortable truths. Is this about what happened at the Winters Gallery? Because if Thomas Winters spread rumors about you after. Mom, stop, I interrupted. It's not about Thomas or the gallery. I just need to do this my way. She handed me another plate to dry. Your father and I only want what's best for you. I know. And cleaning offices at Blackwell International, isn't it? I set down the towel and turned to face her. What if I told you there was more to this job than cleaning? Her eyebrows rose expectantly. For a moment, I considered telling her everything, about the research I'd been doing, the discrepancies I'd found in Blackwell's recent authentication certificates, the suspicious patterns in their acquisition history. About how I believed Victoria Blackwell herself might be involved in art world fraud on a massive scale. Instead, I just smiled. I'm networking. Making connections from the inside. It's unconventional, but it's a foot in the door. A half-truth was better than no truth at all. Mom seemed somewhat mollified. Well, as long as you have a plan. I did have a plan. It just wasn't one my Ivy League family would understand or approve of. 2 hours later, dressed in my crisp black cleaning uniform, I swiped my keycard at the service entrance of Blackwell International. The night security guard, Eddie, nodded at me as I signed in. Special event upstairs, he said, slurping from a cup of coffee. Fancy folks making fancy messes for you to clean. Any idea what the event is? I asked casually, signing the logbook. Something about a new collection. European, I think. The buyers flew in just for tonight. I thanked him and headed for the service elevator, my heart racing. This had to be the Keller collection, old European masters that Blackwell had been pursuing for months. The collection that, according to my research, contained at least 3 works with questionable provenance. As the elevator ascended, I mentally rehearsed my strategy. Stay invisible. Listen carefully. Document everything. Don't get caught. The doors opened onto a transformed 5th floor. The ordinary corporate space had been converted into an elegant gallery, with strategic lighting highlighting each masterpiece. I spotted Victoria Blackwell immediately, resplendent in a red gown, champagne flute in hand as she charmed a group of well-dressed patrons. Slipping into the staff corridor, I found Irene organizing cleaning supplies. Perfect timing, she said. They're starting to wind down out there. We need to wait until most guests have left, but the catering staff needs help clearing glasses and plates now. Can you start with that? I nodded eagerly. Collecting glasses meant I could circulate through the entire event, listening to conversations while remaining practically invisible. Service staff were the perfect camouflage, present but unseen. For the next hour, I glided through the crowd, tray in hand, collecting abandoned champagne flutes and canopy plates. Each snippet of conversation was carefully filed away in my memory to be recorded later. Authentication process is impeccable. Very interested in the Vermeer, though the provenance gap concerns me. Astonishing find after so many years in private hands. I was edging closer to a particularly intense discussion between Victoria and a silver-haired man when someone grabbed my elbow. I turned to find Irene frowning at me. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You've been hovering around the same group for 10 minutes. "Sorry," I murmured. "Just trying to keep up with the empties." Her eyes narrowed. "Well, finish up and start on the back offices. They need wiping down." Reluctantly, I moved away from the conversation I'd been eavesdropping on. As I passed the main display, I slowed, pretending to collect glasses while I studied the centerpiece of the exhibition, a small but exquisite painting attributed to Johannes Vermeer. It was beautiful, with the artist's signature use of light and the intimate domestic scene he was known for. But something about it nagged at me, the same feeling that had led me down this investigative rabbit hole months ago. Magnificent, isn't it? I nearly dropped my tray. Victoria Blackwell stood beside me, her eyes on the painting. "Yes," I managed. "It's breathtaking." "You know Vermeer's work?" She sounded genuinely curious. "I studied art history," I admitted. "His use of light, the stillness of his compositions, they're unmistakable." She studied me with new interest. "Yet here you are, collecting glasses. Life takes unexpected turns." A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Indeed it does." She gestured toward the painting. "What do you think of this particular piece? Was this a test?" I examined the painting again, choosing my words carefully. "It has all the hallmarks of his work, but..." I hesitated. "Go on," she prompted. "There's something about the perspective of the window. It doesn't quite match his other interior scenes." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "An interesting observation from someone who cleans our offices." Before I could respond, the silver-haired man approached, casting a dismissive glance my way before addressing Victoria. I took the opportunity to slip away, my heart pounding. Had I said too much? Would she become suspicious now? As I retreated to the back offices, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a critical mistake. Victoria Blackwell wasn't a woman who missed details, and I'd just revealed myself to be more educated than my position suggested. For the rest of the evening, I kept my head down, methodically cleaning each office as instructed. When I finally reached Victoria's personal office, I worked quickly, knowing I'd have limited time before Irene came to check on me. Her desk was meticulously organized, revealing nothing of interest. But as I cleaned around her computer, I noticed a file folder partially hidden under her keyboard. The label caught my eye: Keller Authentication Reports. I glanced at the door, heart racing. This could be exactly what I needed, the documentation for tonight's exhibition pieces. If I could just peek inside. The sound of approaching footsteps made me freeze. Quickly, I moved away from the desk and began wiping down the windows as Irene appeared in the doorway. "Almost done in here?" "Just finishing up," I replied, working the cloth in rapid circles. "Good. We need to reset the main space once the last guests leave." After she left, I cast one last longing look at the folder. It would have to wait for another opportunity. I'd already pushed my luck enough for one night. As I cleaned the last remnants of the gala, Victoria stopped by on her way out, her assistant trailing behind her with an armful of files. "Excellent work tonight, Cassandra," she said, surprising me by using my name. "My office looks immaculate." "Thank you, Ms. Blackwell." I was impressed by your art knowledge earlier. Perhaps you're overqualified for your current position. I felt a flicker of panic. I just have a hobby interest. She studied me for a moment longer. Be sure to lock up the display cases when you're done. The Keller collection is worth more than this entire building. With that, she swept out, leaving me wondering if I'd just improved my position or endangered my entire operation. By the time I arrived home to my tiny apartment at 3 a.m., I was too exhausted to record the night's observations. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto my bed, setting an alarm to meet Mia for brunch the next day. Sleep claimed me almost instantly, my dreams filled with Vermeer paintings and Victoria Blackwell's searching gaze. The cafe buzzed with Sunday brunch energy as Mia leaned across the table, her eyes wide. She actually asked for your opinion on the painting? Victoria Ice Queen Blackwell herself? I nodded, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. It was strange. Almost like she was testing me. Or recruiting you, Mia suggested, stirring her latte. Maybe she's impressed by the art history major mopping her floors. Or she's suspicious. I bit into my avocado toast. Either way, I need to be more careful. Mia tapped her perfectly manicured nails against her cup. As an investigative journalist for the city's leading art magazine, she was the only person who knew about my undercover work at Blackwell, and the only person who believed my suspicions about their authentication processes. What about the folder you saw? Can you get another look at it? Maybe. Victoria is flying to London tomorrow. If I can get assigned to clean her office again. Cassie. I froze at the sound of my name, turning to see my cousin Vanessa approaching our table, her fiancé Derek in tow. I thought that was you, she said, giving me an air kiss. How are you? Still with the cleaning job? Mia shot me a sympathetic look. Yes, still cleaning, I confirmed, forcing a smile. Vanessa's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. Well, good for you. It's so important to be humble. Derek chuckled. When Vanessa told me you'd taken a job as a janitor with your fancy art degree, I thought she was joking. It's not janitor, it's environmental services professional, I corrected, gritting my teeth. Of course, Vanessa said soothingly. Anyway, we're having a dinner party next weekend, celebrating our engagement again, since some people missed the first one. She gave me a pointed look. You should come. Bring your mop? They both laughed as if this were the height of comedy. I'll check my schedule, I said stiffly. After they moved on to their table, Mia reached across and squeezed my hand. Ignore them. They have no idea what you're really doing. Sometimes I wonder if I know what I'm really doing, I admitted. What if I'm wrong about all of this? What if Blackwell's authentications are legitimate and I'm just cleaning toilets for nothing? Your research was solid, Mia reminded me. The inconsistencies in those certificates, the suspicious timing of the acquisitions, it all points to something fishy. Trust your instincts. I nodded, trying to recapture my certainty. 6 months ago, while researching my thesis on authentication methodologies, I'd stumbled upon a pattern in Blackwell International's recent acquisitions. Works appearing on the market with minimal provenance, quickly authenticated and sold for millions. It wasn't just one or two pieces, it was systematic. When my attempts to investigate through official channels hit wall after wall, I'd concocted this unorthodox plan. Get inside Blackwell. Gather evidence. Expose the truth. I need more, I said finally. Suspicions aren't enough. I need hard evidence that they're knowingly authenticating forgeries. Mia's eyes gleamed with the excitement of the chase. Then let's get it. If Victoria's out of town tomorrow, that's your chance to check that folder. It's not that simple. I can't just. Can't just what? Mia challenged. You've come this far, Cassie. Don't back down now. She was right. I'd sacrificed too much to give up. My family's respect, potentially my career prospects, certainly my dignity, all on the altar of truth. Okay, I agreed. Tomorrow night, if I can get into her office, I'll do it. Monday night found me once again at Blackwell International, this time with far more nervous energy than usual. Victoria was indeed in London, and Irene had assigned me to the executive floor, including Victoria's office. Make it spotless, she instructed. Ms. Blackwell returns Wednesday, and you know how particular she is. I nodded, already planning how to create enough time alone in the office to examine the authentication folder. As I gathered my cleaning supplies, Eddie the security guard called me over. Hey, Cassandra. Got a special request for you tonight. My stomach dropped. What's that? Ms. Blackwell's assistant called down. Said you should give special attention to organizing the magazines and catalogs in her office. Apparently, Ms. Blackwell mentioned you specifically. I blinked in surprise. Me? Why? Eddie shrugged. Above my pay grade. Just passing along the message. As I rode the elevator up, my mind raced with possibilities. Why would Victoria request me specifically? Had my comment about the Vermeer made that much of an impression? Or was this some kind of trap? Victoria's office was exactly as I'd left it after the gala, immaculate. But now, on her desk, sat a neatly arranged stack of art magazines and auction catalogs, with a post-it note on top. Please organize chronologically on the shelf. Must be Andrea, Victoria's assistant. I approached the desk cautiously, as if the magazines might bite. This was both a perfect opportunity and a potential risk. I would have a legitimate reason to be at Victoria's desk, handling her materials. But if this was indeed a trap, I decided to do exactly as instructed, at first. I carefully sorted the publications by date, arranging them on the designated shelf. Then, once that task was complete, I began my routine cleaning, all while keeping an eye out for the authentication folder. It wasn't under the keyboard anymore, but as I dusted the desk, I noticed a cabinet that had been locked during my previous cleaning sessions was now slightly ajar. Heart pounding, I glanced toward the door before taking a cautious peek inside. There it was, the Keller Authentication Reports folder, along with several others similarly labeled. I glanced at my watch. I had maybe 20 minutes before Irene would come to check on my progress. With trembling hands, I opened the folder. Inside were detailed reports on each piece in the Keller collection, complete with provenance documentation, scientific analysis results, and expert opinions. I quickly thumbed through to the Vermeer report, scanning for anything suspicious. The provenance was indeed thin, nearly 2 centuries were unaccounted for, a massive gap for such an important work. The scientific analysis confirmed the painting's age and composition matched the period, but there was a note that certain pigments showed unusual characteristics. I pulled out my phone and began taking photos of the report, trying to capture every page while keeping an ear out for approaching footsteps. The expert testimonials were especially interesting. 2 prominent Vermeer scholars had declined to authenticate the piece, but their objections were overruled by a third expert, someone named Dr. Marcus Hensley. The name struck a chord. Hadn't Mia mentioned Hensley in connection with another questionable authentication last year? I took a photo of his signature for reference. Just as I was replacing the folder, a different name caught my eye on another report. Thomas Winters, my former boss and the reason I'd left the gallery world. Thomas had no business authenticating anything. His expertise was in modern art, not old masters. Yet here was his signature on a Rembrandt authentication. I quickly photographed that document too, my pulse quickening. This could be the thread that unraveled everything. If Thomas was signing off on old masters outside his expertise, perhaps in exchange for favors from Victoria Blackwell. The sound of the elevator arriving on the floor sent me into a panic. I quickly returned the folder, closed the cabinet, and moved to the windows, cloth in hand, trying to look busy. Irene appeared in the doorway. "How's it going in here?" "Almost done," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "Just finishing the windows." She nodded approvingly. "The magazine organization looks good. Make sure you vacuum when you're done." After she left, I exhaled slowly, my heart still racing. The photos were safely on my phone, but I needed to get them to Mia as soon as possible. If they contained what I thought they did, we might finally have our proof. The rest of my shift crawled by, each minute an exercise in restraint as I fought the urge to examine the photos I'd taken. Only once I was safely in a taxi heading home did I allow myself to review them. The Vermeer report was even more damning than I'd initially thought. Not only had 2 experts declined to authenticate it, but the pigment analysis showed inconsistencies that had been essentially dismissed in the final report. Most importantly, a note from Victoria herself indicated she had spoken to the dissenting experts and resolved their concerns. I immediately texted Mia, "Need to meet. Tomorrow morning. I have something." Her response came quickly, "My apartment. 8 a.m. Bring coffee and scandal." That night, I hardly slept. My mind kept returning to the documents I'd photographed, to Victoria's unsettling interest in my art knowledge, to the risks I was taking. What if I was discovered? What if the evidence wasn't enough? What if Victoria Blackwell was more powerful than the truth? By morning, exhaustion had given way to determination. I arrived at Mia's apartment armed with coffee and the most significant evidence I'd uncovered yet. "This is it," Mia breathed, scrolling through the photos on my phone. The inconsistencies in the reports, the experts who refused to authenticate, Victoria's note about resolving their concerns, it's all here. "And look at this," I said, pointing to the signature page. Thomas Winters signed off on a Rembrandt authentication, but his expertise is in modern art. He has no business evaluating old masters. Mia's eyes widened. "The same Thomas Winters who fired me when I questioned a suspicious Pollock authentication last year," I confirmed. "The same Thomas who happens to be golfing buddies with Richard Blackwell, Victoria's brother." "It's a network," Mia said, excitement building in her voice. "They're all connected, all covering for each other. But we still don't have definitive proof that they know they're authenticating forgeries," I pointed out. "This shows negligence, maybe even willful blindness, but not conscious fraud." Mia bit her lip, thinking. "We need more. Something that explicitly shows they knew the works were fake." "There's something else," I said slowly. Before I got fired, Thomas was working on a major sales agreement with a collector named Anton Resnick. Very wealthy, very private. The rumor was that Resnick's collection contained several questionable pieces, but Thomas was pushing hard to acquire them for a client. Let me guess, the client was Blackwell International. I nodded. What if Resnick is their source for these forgeries? If we could connect him directly to Blackwell, and then to the Keller collection. That would be the smoking gun, Mia finished. Can you get access to the acquisition records? They'd show where Blackwell sourced the Keller pieces. Maybe. I sipped my coffee, thinking. Victoria's still in London tomorrow. If I can get back into her office. It's risky, Mia warned. You've already pushed your luck once. I know. But this might be our only chance. The decision made, we spent the rest of the morning formulating a plan. I would focus on finding the acquisition records for the Keller collection. Mia would dig into Resnick's background and any public connections to Blackwell International. If our suspicions were correct, we'd go public with the story, a major exposé on fraud in the art world, with Blackwell International at its center. What we didn't know was that our time was already running out. I arrived for my shift that evening to find the Blackwell offices in an unusual state of activity. Executives who normally left by 6 were still in meetings. Security guards I didn't recognize were stationed at key points throughout the building. What's going on? I asked Eddie as I signed in. Big news, he replied. Ms. Blackwell's coming back early from London. Some kind of emergency meeting tonight. My blood ran cold. Tonight? What time? Her flight lands at 9. She'll be here by 10, they're saying. I checked my watch. It was 7:30. If Victoria was returning tonight, my window of opportunity had just shrunk dramatically. Upstairs, I found Irene in a state of high anxiety. Everything needs to be perfect, she stressed. Whatever's happening, it's big. They've called in the entire executive team. Do we know what it's about? I asked, trying to sound merely curious. Something about the Keller collection. That's all I overheard. She handed me a set of supplies. Start with the conference room. I want it spotless for their meeting. As I worked, my mind raced. Had someone discovered the photographs I'd taken? Was the emergency meeting about a security breach? Or was it something else entirely, perhaps a problem with one of the Keller pieces? The conference room provided no answers, but I worked methodically, all while keeping an ear out for any useful information. Around 9, executives began arriving, their faces tense as they gathered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. Cannot believe Resnick would do this. Authentication clearly states. Legal exposure could be catastrophic. The fragments of conversation confirmed my worst fears. Something had gone very wrong with the Keller collection, and Anton Resnick was involved. This could be the break we needed, but it also meant I might never get another chance to access Victoria's office. I needed to act now. Wheeling my cleaning cart toward the executive wing, I tried to appear as inconspicuous as possible. Victoria's assistant Andrea was at her desk, frantically organizing documents. I'm here to clean Ms. Blackwell's office before she returns, I said. Andrea barely glanced up. Make it quick. She'll be here in less than an hour, and everything needs to be ready. I slipped into Victoria's office and closed the door most of the way, leaving just enough of a gap to hear if anyone approached. Working quickly, I began my usual cleaning routine while searching for the acquisition records. The cabinet that had contained the authentication folder was now locked, not surprising given the circumstances. I moved to Victoria's desk, carefully checking drawers while maintaining the appearance of cleaning. The bottom drawer yielded a folder labeled Keller Acquisition, Confidential. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing contracts, correspondence, and most importantly, the source documentation for each piece. I began photographing pages as quickly as possible, my heart hammering in my chest. The correspondence confirmed our suspicions. Blackwell had acquired the collection through Resnick, who had claimed the pieces came from a private collector in Austria. But a note from Victoria expressed concerns about the provenance, even as she pushed for the acquisition to proceed. As I turned the page, a name jumped out at me. Thomas Winters had served as the initial authenticator on several pieces, recommending them to Blackwell despite his lack of expertise in the period. Subsequent experts had raised red flags, but Victoria had overridden them, noting the significant profit potential of the collection. This was it, proof that Blackwell had knowingly acquired questionable works, authenticated them despite expert objections, and was now selling them to unsuspecting collectors. I was so engrossed in the documents that I didn't hear the approach of footsteps until it was too late. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I whirled around to find Victoria Blackwell standing in the doorway, her travel clothes slightly rumpled but her gaze as sharp as ever. Behind her stood 2 security guards. I was cleaning your office," I stammered, hurriedly closing the folder. "With my confidential files?" She stepped into the room, her eyes moving from the folder to my phone on the desk. "How convenient that you're so interested in the Keller collection." My mind raced for a plausible explanation, but found none. I was caught red-handed. "Who are you working for?" Victoria demanded. "One of our competitors? The press?" When I didn't immediately respond, she turned to the guards. "Search her. Check her phone." One guard moved forward and picked up my phone. The gallery of incriminating photos was still open on the screen. "She's been photographing the documents," he confirmed. Victoria's expression hardened. "Lock the door." The click of the lock was like a gunshot in the silent office. Victoria moved to her desk and pressed a button on her phone. "Andrea, call security. Tell them to review all access logs for Cassandra Pierce. I want to know every file she's accessed, every office she's entered. And get Mr. Richardson on the line, we have a spy." She turned back to me, her voice ice cold. "Sit down, Ms. Pierce. Or should I say, whoever you really are." I sank into the chair, mind racing. This was bad, catastrophically bad. Not only had I been caught spying, but Victoria was already moving to contain the situation. If she destroyed the evidence before I could get word to Mia. "I'm exactly who I said I am," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Cassandra Pierce. Art history graduate. And yes, I've been investigating you." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "Investigating me? On what grounds?" "Forgery. Fraud. Authentication of questionable works for profit." A flicker of something, surprise? Concern, crossed her face before she laughed, the sound brittle in the tense room. "That's quite an accusation from a cleaning lady." "A cleaning lady with evidence," I countered. "Evidence that's already been shared with others." It was the bluff of a desperate woman, but I maintained my steady gaze. The inconsistencies in the Vermeer authentication, the experts who withdrew their support, Thomas Winters signing off on old masters beyond his expertise, it all points to systematic fraud. Victoria studied me for a long moment, calculation evident in her eyes. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," she said finally, dismissing the guards with a subtle nod. When we were alone, she circled her desk like a predator, fingers trailing over the polished surface. "You're not the first to suspect, you know. But you're certainly the most creative in your approach. So you admit it?" "I admit nothing." Victoria's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But I recognize dedication when I see it. Tell me, why the elaborate charade?" Why not simply apply for a position that suits your qualifications? Would you have hired a woman who was fired from Winter's Gallery for questioning authentications? A woman with no connections or influential family name? A flicker of respect crossed her face. Fair point. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Blackwell, Mr. Richardson is on line 1. Victoria held my gaze as she pressed the button. Tell him I'll call back. I've found a rather interesting solution to our problem. My heart hammered against my ribs. Solution could mean many things, none of them likely good for me. Cassandra Pierce, she said, resuming her seat behind the desk. Summa cum laude from Westbridge. Thesis on authentication methodologies in the modern market. Former gallery assistant at Winters until you questioned a Pollock certification. And now, cleaning lady extraordinaire. She leaned forward, hands clasped. I have a proposition for you. Tomorrow morning, 2 things could happen. You could be arrested for corporate espionage, your reputation destroyed forever. Or, here she paused, eyes gleaming with something like appreciation, you could join my authentication team properly. It seems you've already completed the most thorough interview process in Blackwell's history. I stared at her, unable to disguise my shock. Was this some kind of test? Victoria's enigmatic smile told me everything and nothing at all. Let's just say I value perspective from all angles, including from those willing to start at the bottom to expose the truth. The world tilted beneath me as I realized, perhaps too late, that in my determination to uncover Victoria Blackwell's game, I'd inadvertently been playing hers all along.